Good evening. Welcome back to Ponzinomics. I'm Alex.
Evening all. I'm Sam. Tonight we're back in football, and tonight's story has done something no financial collapse on this show has managed yet. It's entered the English language as a warning. Every board of directors in the country knows the phrase. Every football chairman dreads it. Doing a Leeds.
Leeds United Football Club. Founded 1919. 3 league titles. Champions League semi-finalists. One of the most passionate fan bases in England, and in the early 2000s, the single most spectacular financial implosion in the history of English football.
We lived the dream. That was Peter Ridsdale's explanation. He literally said that, out loud, in public.
He did, and in fairness to Ridsdale, and that is the last time I will say in fairness to Ridsdale, the dream was real. For about 18 months, Leeds United were genuinely one of the best teams in Europe. And then the bill arrived.
Let's start at the beginning.
Leeds United in the 1990s were a solid Premier League club. Founder members of the league in 1992, they'd actually won the First Division title in the final season before the Premier League was created. A genuine club with genuine history. Don Revie's side of the 1960s and 70s was one of the finest in English football history. 2 league titles, FA Cup, European pedigree. But by the late 90s, they were mid-table, respectable, unremarkable.
Then Peter Ridsdale became chairman in 1997.
Then Peter Ridsdale became chairman in 1997, and David O'Leary became manager in 1998, and they decided that Leeds United were going to be the next super club. They were going to compete with Manchester United. They were going to play Champions League football every year. They were going to sign the players to make it happen. And they were going to borrow the money to pay for all of it.
On the assumption that the Champions League revenue would cover the debt.
On the assumption that Champions League revenue would cover the debt. That's the critical point. The entire financial model depended on qualifying for the Champions League every season. It was not a contingency plan. It was the only plan.
How much did they borrow?
The debt accumulated in remarkable fashion. At the start of Ridsdale's era, the club had debts of £9 million, then £21 million, then £39 million, then £82 million. Then it peaked at approximately £119 million.
9 million to 119 million.
In consecutive seasons. They were signing players, Robbie Fowler, Robbie Keane, Lee Bowyer, Jonathan Woodgate, Mark Viduka, Olivier Dacour. At fees and wages, the club had no sustainable basis to support. And for a brief, glorious moment, it worked. In 2001, Leeds United reached the semi-finals of the UEFA Champions League. They beat Deportivo La Coruña in the quarterfinals. They played Valencia in the semis. They lost, but they were there. One of the 4 best clubs in Europe.
And then?
And then they had to qualify again. And they didn't. In 2002, they finished 5th in the Premier League. 1 place outside the Champions League qualification spots. 1 position. And the entire financial architecture, built entirely on the assumption of annual Champions League revenue, began to collapse.
They borrowed £119 million against a future that required them to finish in the top 4 every single season. They finished 5th. Once. And it destroyed them.
The fire sale began immediately. Rio Ferdinand, their best player, England's best defender, sold to Manchester United for £30 million. At the time, the most expensive transfer involving a British player in history. Leeds fans knew when that happened what was coming.
They sold their best player to their biggest rivals, To pay debts run up on the assumption they'd be competing with those rivals. The humiliation has a particular texture.
The players kept going. Robbie Keane, Olivier Decourt, Jonathan Woodgate, eventually sold to Real Madrid, which should have been a triumphant moment, but felt like burning furniture to heat the house. By the time Ridsdale resigned in 2003, the club was in severe distress.
Tell me about the goldfish.
Yes, the goldfish. In the forensic examination of Ridsdale's spending that followed his resignation, it emerged that among the expenses charged to the club was £8,000 for fish, for his office aquarium. In the context of £119 million of debt, it is a rounding error. But it became the symbol of everything. The chairman who spent £8,000 of club money on fish, while the club was borrowing itself into oblivion.
£8,000 on fish that he put in his office with club money, while the club owed £119 million.
The fish became famous. Ridsdale wrote an autobiography about the whole period. He called it, and I want to be precise, United We Fall.
He called his autobiography United We Fall.
He did.
I genuinely don't know if that's self-awareness or just brass neck. Moving on.
Administration came in May 2007. By this point, Leeds had already been relegated from the Premier League in 2004. The debts had followed them down through the divisions. When they entered administration, they received a 10-point deduction in that season. Then, in the summer, further financial rule breaches meant they received a 15-point penalty for the following season. 15 points before a ball was kicked.
How close did they come to being expelled from the Football League entirely?
Very close. The Football League seriously considered it, which would have been an extraordinary fate. Leeds United, Champions League semi-finalists 6 years earlier, expelled from professional football? They were ultimately readmitted with the 15-point penalty instead, which still cost them promotion that year.
And what division were they in by this point?
League One, the third tier of English football. 5 years after playing Valencia in the Champions League semi-finals, in League One.
I want to make sure everyone listening understands that properly. 5 years. Champions League semi-finals to the third tier of English football. In 5 years.
It's the speed of it that makes it extraordinary. And this is where doing a Leeds enters the language. Because every other football chairman in the country looked at what happened to Leeds and felt cold. The phrase, to do a Leeds, became football's shorthand for financial catastrophe. Spending beyond your means on the assumption a future income will materialize. When it doesn't, collapse. It's in newspaper headlines, in boardroom conversations, in fan forums. It entered the language because what happened to Leeds was both unique in its drama and universal in its mechanism.
They didn't just go bust. They became a warning. The cautionary tale that gets repeated in every football boardroom in the country whenever anyone suggests spending money they don't have yet. Don't do a Leeds.
The phrase has been applied to Portsmouth, Bolton, Newcastle, Bradford, any club that overreaches and falls. In Brazil, there's an equivalent, doing a Cruzeiro. The warning has gone global.
And Ridsdale? After destroying one of England's great clubs, what became of Peter Ridsdale?
He became chairman of Cardiff City, then Plymouth Argyle, then Preston North End. Financial controversy followed him to each.
He left Leeds, which he'd driven into the third tier of English football, while spending £8,000 on office fish, and then got jobs running other football clubs. Multiple times.
The football industry has a very forgiving memory.
Apparently.
There is a postscript worth mentioning. Leeds United eventually climbed back. It took 16 years. 16 years in the Championship and League One. But in 2020, under Marcelo Bielsa, they returned to the Premier League. They were relegated again in 2023. And in the 2024-25 season, under Daniel Farke, they won the Championship and went back up. They're in the Premier League again.
16 years. To undo 5 years of Peter Ridsdale.
That's the arithmetic of doing a Leeds.
Here's the Ponzinomics thesis applied precisely. Leeds borrowed against a future, Champions League football every season, indefinitely. The future required them to finish in the top 4 of the Premier League every year. They finished 5th, once. The entire structure, built entirely on that assumption, collapsed. £119 million of debt, built on one assumption, that turned out to be wrong by 1 league position.
It's not complicated. It never is. The mechanism is simple. The consequences were enormous. And the phrase they left behind, doing a Leeds, is perhaps the most fitting legacy any Ponzinomics subject has given us. Because it means everyone knows the story. Everyone uses the warning. And clubs still do it anyway.
They always do. We're looking at you, Barcelona, and you, Rangers.
Next episode, we go to Germany, to a car company that was supposed to be the gold standard of engineering integrity, Volkswagen, and a scandal they called Dieselgate, where they installed secret software in 11 million cars worldwide to cheat emissions tests, and then told everyone the cars were clean.
This time it's different, right?
It never is.